Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about the riff? Our favorite albums featuring riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, are my friends in music, my co-hosts, Dylan Adams, Justin Swindle, for the last time in 2023. How are you guys doing?
Angry.
It's been a great year. We've been doing this since April. We've gotten to talk to a lot of people that we may have never gotten the opportunity to talk to before. We've talked about a ton of records this year. Looking back, how do you feel 2023 went for you guys?
It was a good year.
Yeah.
I'm just like the blimp, just like the tire. I moved to a new city.
Yeah.
Live with a new roommate. It was good though.
Yeah, Dylan.
It was pretty solid. Definitely, I'm not one to kind of dig into like, oh, it's a new year. Let's create all this new, all these new things I've got to do. I just kind of roll with the punches when it comes to that. I will say, I never thought that I would have got into something like this other than just like flapping my gums to a couple drunk buddies, like on a couch at 3 a.m. in the morning.
We've
screaming
definitely
about Joe Perry.
We've certainly done plenty of that. And
yeah.
Maybe it was just time to get it in front of a mic for some reason, but
yeah, for whatever reason. And, you know, it surprisingly, we've had people tell us they enjoy this, which has been the surprising part of it. Right.
Yeah.
Who would have thought, you know, we've had guests that we never thought we could have been able to reach out to, that some were even excited maybe, to come on.
Maybe, I don't know.
You know, I don't really do well with compliments or, you know, positive affirmation. So it's just like, oh, okay, we did a thing. Like, this is cool. This is fun. This is still fun. So, you know, I've never thought about what we do as work either. Like, yeah, there's pressure to it because we always want it to be good. And I think we strive to make it the best product and content that we could possibly make it. And there's a little bit of pressure behind that. And, you know, that's the type of pressure and maybe stress that you do want. You want to make it the best quality product you can get. I do know that it's been a good year. It's been a lot of fun. I'm still having fun doing it.
Yeah. I mean, this basically started because I needed a project. I needed to submit something for school. And so if it just was an excuse to like have my friends on to talk about music, then absolutely I'd do that as a project every time. Yeah. I mean, we're not perfect. We're still rolling. We're still trying to get better at it in 2024. And, you know, it started out just me and Dylan talking in audio, and then it turned into the video stuff. So learning how to do all these various little things here and there over time has been very fulfilling. So if that was the only thing to come out of this year, then I'd say that was it was a big one for me in 2023. But to the matters at hand, as with many publications and different music fans, everyone's putting together their lists, their end of the year list. What were your favorite releases? What were the best? What did you love? What did you hate? We're going to do that. Ours is a little different. I've never been a fan of the way some reviewers will go about a certain release where maybe it's like a ranked tier system, like this is the best, or this deserves 5 out of 5, or maybe it's a star. I don't really think of music in that way. I think that's just kind of weird. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what's a 3.5 out of 5? Like, what is that? So we put together a list of 10 albums. We're going to throw in some EPs or splits or collabs when necessary. We're going to talk about some non-heavy records. We're going to talk about the things we're looking forward to in the next year. But this is by no means a ranked list. It is just albums that we really enjoyed this year that we wanted to talk about. I know I can speak for all three of us when I say that we probably had like a huge list and we had to really kind of scale it down to fit the structure of this episode. So I'm sure we'll mention some of our favorites that maybe didn't make it on the actual final list. But yeah, it was a treacherous journey to get to 10 for sure.
I have a playlist on Spotify that like as an album comes out, I'll add it so I can like remember.
Mm-hmm.
My playlist is literally 24. It's 24 hours long.
Good idea. I didn't do that, and I was just like, I'll remember all this stuff. I didn't.
Yeah.
So like I had to go back to so many sources. I had to go to like my record shelf. I had to go to list of all the releases in like 2023. Also, that Loudwire page was a great help, but it is also the most glitchy piece of shit website that I've ever
Shots
used.
fucking fired.
It would just like it would just like it would freeze and then it would just refresh, so you couldn't get back to where you're at. It was a nightmare. But I got through it. Like it was rough. It got to a point where I was at work with a notebook, just writing down things that would come into my head. Oh, I listened to that. And it was just like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the book House of Leaves, but there's points in that book that you can open it up and like the script is like in different directions. It's upside down. It's a hellscape. So it was just like that. It looked like, Homer in their Shining episode with no beer and no TV, make Homer something, just like that.
I got the idea to make a year playlist from Austin. I don't know if you still do that, but you used to. But your playlist would just be like one song from each release or something. But I'm just like,
fuck it.
F it. I'm putting the whole thing on here. I don't care.
I will be making a playlist featuring probably songs like the standout tracks from each of our picks. So you can access that in this episode. We'll provide the link in the bio for this shit. But
that was the hardest part for me, was like because I listen to albums in the whole scope.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me just to pick like one track out, especially if I love the whole record. And, it was really hard to go through and just like, God, like, what track am I going to pick out? One album in particular, which we'll touch on, was like the hardest thing because every single song on the album literally could have been a single. And it was a nightmare.
Yeah, that is a hard thing. I mean, I have a lot of, just kind of summing up my list. I mean, I have some debut records. I have some locals on here, but a lot of my listening this year, the albums that I picked really were album focused. Like, yes, the climate of music today can be very like single heavy, but a lot of the records that I ended up having on my list really kind of deserve or lend to listening as one full piece. So yeah, it is difficult to just kind of pick one where it's like, well, it makes a little more sense if you just kind of start in the beginning and then actually end it. But hopefully, if you like what we talked about today, or maybe you haven't checked it out, I hope you kind of dig in, listen to the record in full as it was intended for sure. But yeah, I guess whoever wants to start, by all means, we can get into this, maybe with the first album, whichever one.
Swindle, why don't you start us out?
I'm going to start with Nature Morte by the band Big Brave. This is, I think, their 7th full length. It was released on February 24th of this year. It came out on Brill Jockey Records.
Chicago label.
Big Brave is from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. They are kind of a weird band. It's like, I think they're a 3-piece. It's ambient, kind of post-metal-y, drone-y type stuff. The person, like, the music itself is kind of atonal. They'll just, like, play a chord over and over again, and it's not even necessarily a chord progression. It's just, like, a whole song of just one chord. played per bar, or it'll be like feedback. The person's voice that's singing really carries the band.
Is very
kinda, to me.
Is very emotional. It's very like I remember when some of the singles were coming out for this record and playing it again, singles for this record. But
9 minute long.
Yeah, exactly. The vocals were very powerful and, like you said, very like a driving force of this record. One thing too that I'll add, kind of remembering that album when I listen to it, and a lot of my list, I think another piece that really stands out about it too is like just the drums are just so fucking huge, and it's like rhythmically very, very interesting and unique.
That is another thing I like about the band is they'll kind of like drone on a chord, but also the drummer will play one rhythm for like the whole 8-minute song.
It's a very tribal kind of thing, like very Neurosis-esque.
Kind of like the intensity of the songs reminds me of like just anxiety, because a lot of times it'll just be like I said, like feedback for 9 minutes with the same rhythm happening over and over again. And I'm just like, oh, this is sometimes what's happening in my brain. So like, it's nice to hear that sometimes.
I think if I remember correctly, this is a band that you suggested to me maybe earlier in the year.
I showed you the album Vital, I think, the one with the saw, the saw blade on the front.
I know they've done a collaboration with The Body, so that's another one. And I know there's like, I know they're friends with, you know, obviously The Body I mentioned, but like Thou, I think, is probably how I came across this band, touring together or doing some sort of music together. But that's a great pick. This was on my list, and then I had to like scale it down, so it didn't end up, but definitely a solid first pick.
You know, it's wild because like I'm not normally a big fan of like big droning out things because I kind of get lost and I kind of lose track of where it's at. But on some occasions that works out. Like if it's done tastefully, if it's meant to sound structureless, but it still has structure, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just like, hey, we're going to go out and hit a chord and let it ring out. It's not Sleep's Dope Smoker. Like that's fine. You know, it's fine. It's a fun record, but there needs to be a little bit more. I narrowed my list down pretty severely, and I had the only thing I could consider kind of adjacent to this is I had a single and a record that I put on here, and the record is the most recent Mizmor record, Prosaic, which is very like, I mean, it's, what is it, like an hour and some change long? It's 4 tracks. There's not really a single you could pick out on this thing, but I'd say the first track that they released for the album was the one that got me really into it. I believe the first time I heard these guys was through Austin. It's the album with the face that I really got into.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that record particularly, but then there's like I think it's pronounced Karn. It's like the Stones.
Yeah,
that record, I would like walk around Bowling Green, like through the graveyard downtown and stuff like that, and just listen to that record, and it is like so good. This record caught me kind of by surprise how much I enjoyed it. This one had a little bit more, maybe it was a little less drone on this one. I think they started to really, they had an EP that came out in 21, then they did that split with Thou in 22 that really started to maybe hammer it home that they maybe had a little bit more traditional kind of song structure to it. And this album really got me. Like it's parts doom, parts drone, parts black metal. It's got that kind of wild vocal style he's known for. And the track I kind of really dug was No Place to Arrive, which is if you've got 9, 20 minutes, 14 minutes to spare, or an hour and a half to spare, I mean, check the record out. I did get a chance to see him this year, which he's not really known for touring. But I saw him at Dark Matter in Nashville, and that was the foggiest show I've ever been to. Like the next day I couldn't talk, I couldn't see from all just the smoke machines and everything, but it was
It's crazy. It's a heavy, heavy, heavy fucking record. Definitely go get some sunshine after that one. But
yeah, walking around Bowling Green is very appropriate for listening to Mizmor.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the single
vocals,
I had tied to that too was the band Monolord released a single this year called "It's All the Same," and that band is rad. I was hoping they'd get a new record, but this single through Relapse was second to none. Just really melodic, really like makes me want to watch like Hammer horror films. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, my first pick is much shorter than both of y'all's, like severely shorter. Sometimes when you release an album, and maybe we'll talk about this as well as we progress through our list, but sometimes if it's released early enough, maybe it gets glossed over, maybe you forget about it just because you're doing other things get released, so maybe it gets buried. But when I heard this at the beginning of the year, it has stuck with me the entire time. And I am, of course, talking about SCALP's Black Tar that was released on Closed Casket Activities. The artwork kind of speaks for itself. Like, this is crazy. This is their sophomore album, if you can call it that. Maybe this will lend to discussion, but this is like a 12-minute long sophomore album, and it is fast. They call themselves West Coast Death Violence. I mean, it's power violence, it's death metal, it's sludge, it's hardcore. It is like unrelenting, one after the other. It is a 5-piece band from Southern California. I think they started almost as if like through a Halloween show as like a joke band. And then we're like, hey, why don't we actually start a serious band and just do that? And so they did. And this was my introduction to them. I know they have another record that came out maybe in 2020. Both records were also produced by Taylor Young, who I'm sure will come up quite a bit on this list, or at least on mine. Taylor, of course, Dead Body, Twitching Tongues, worked on Nails. Yeah. Again, something we'll probably bring up later as well. But yeah, recorded this in 2022. If you like bands like Dead in the Dirt, Nails, as you mentioned, Dystopia, you'll probably like this record. Yeah, I think my favorite track on the whole album is called Endless Relapse. And just the way it grooves and the riff is like pummeling down on you. It's great. But yeah, like I said, it's only 12 minutes long. So by the time it's over, you're like, oh shit, like, I guess I'll start it over again. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like the EP LP thing, maybe that's kind of changed now. I don't know what
I believe so
dictates what. I think maybe it's more based on intent. Like, what is your intent in releasing an album, or like what the artist considers to be a full length release. Obviously, this is probably my shortest pick on the whole list, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, does it matter? Does it need to be a certain length to be classified as an album?
I don't necessarily think so. I do believe that it is probably more so the artist that's going to make that choice. You know, I know on paper, like an LP is probably X amount of minutes per side of a vinyl. You know, an EP is the same way. A 7-inch is whatever fits in, 7-inch record. But at this point, it's like whichever, because think of how many bands strictly release EPs, right? 5-6 songs, but we just we just did an episode on an EP that was 30 minutes long. I mean, there's a split that came out in the last year that technically could be a full length record, but it's technically a split. So it's technically 2 EPs. I mean, it could be a list of things. I think I do like the concept of like a full length record coming out and it's 12 minutes long. Tsunami's most recent album, it's like 15 minutes long, maybe, and it's just batshit insane. But then I listened to some slam death band called Torture that was absolutely torture to get through because it was 73 minutes long. And it's like, I got like 20 minutes in and was like, I can't do this. Like, I get it, it's fun, but man, it's wild. But, I can listen to an album that's an hour long as it's, enjoyable, and you can go, it didn't feel like an hour. Right. So it's all relative.
Some music is not made to be over 15 minutes long. I mean, Power Violence and Grind are like two of my favorite records, but I don't want to listen to 43 minutes of it.
I agree with that statement. I think this is perfect for 12 minutes. It doesn't feel tiring. It honestly, I listened to it on repeat like multiple times just to get like, I need more of it. It is a very nihilistic, negative, bleak record. It's bitter. Some of the themes in general, I mean, is really just kind of like what in plainest terms is just a huge 12-minute judgment of mankind and the selfishness that people can have in their actions, I guess. So I recommend it. I think it's great. Yeah.
You brought up a good point about albums getting released early in the year, and sometimes they may just get glossed over because let's face it, I'm sure with all the research we did, there was a lot of shit that came out in 2023, and there's more shit that comes out every year. But one thing I wanted to point out about that is it came out on Closed Casket. Closed Casket, Maggot Stomp, and $20 Spin all do these really cool things with how they release stuff. Maybe it's an EP, maybe it's a split, maybe it's a 12-minute full-length record, but they do these great releases of like, hey, here it is. It drops at midnight. If you get it, you get it. If not, there will be a long player release of it. But those three labels are doing a really good job of just putting out really good media in the year. And, you know, hey, here's a surprise release from this band that hasn't put anything out in like 6 years. Have fun with it. It's dropping pre-orders and the album dropped today. You know, that kind of thing.
There was a couple albums that we'll certainly get to that kind of had some unique ways of releasing albums that some trends I hope kind of stick around. But Swindle, what's your next album? What's your next pick, buddy?
My next album is A New Tomorrow by Zulu. This is Zulu's third release. It's their first LP. They've had 2 EPs before this. They're from LA. This album came out on March 3rd from Flat Spot Records. Their 2 EPs before this were like very, very fast kind of power violence, around also probably around like the 10-12 minute mark. This album, they kind of slowed down, and not that they're like playing slow, but it's not power violence, but it's a lot heavier. It's kind of like at times they're like heavy, slow breakdowns and like beat down kind of stuff. There are a lot of like lyrical themes on the album of Black people's pain being the only thing that they can share through art, and like the only thing that's paid attention to. And I guess that in the album they wanted to be able to spread Black joy more and have something positive, I guess.
I like that label a lot. They released a it didn't end up on my final list, but it was certainly like a hard one to let go with Buggin's debut record, Concrete Cowboys, that was released through the same label, a Chicago band that people should definitely check out. Great hardcore band. But yeah, great pick. This also came up on mine as well, so I'm glad somebody brought it up.
Well, we want to transition to like, you know, some beat down, just fucking heavy shit that is just ignorant, and maybe doesn't have the same semblance of, you know, being topical and being, you know, a commentary on some really important issues, but just being a very good representation of anger in its purest form is a record I was really happy with, and a band I was really happy to see live finally, which was the newest Sanguisugabogg album, Homicidal Ecstasy. Just a blending of slam, brutal death metal, you know, hardcore, old school grind, all sorts of shit. I mean, this is an album that is, their first record was enjoyable, which was called Pornographic Seizures. But it was like, okay, it's cool. Something about the second record, the catchiness was better, the hooks were better, the writing was better. Yeah, you had like tracks on the first album like Dead as Shit and Gore Pig and all that. But this album just trumps that thing. And the track I picked off this was called Pissed. I mean, there are great tracks like Hammer Smashed Face, Beaten into Submission, like just standard death metal tracks. But hearing the phrase just pissed is like, all right, this is as perfect can be. It's ignorant. I mean, I saw this band essentially play like Capture the Flag with a football in their pit. And I saw people doing the most ignorantly stupid things. And this was like, I went to this show this year. It was a stacked bill. It was Sanguisugabogg, Vomit Forth, Cruelty, which their album just missed this 10. I was really going to get that in there. And I think Gates to Hell played it. Like this was the day before my hernia surgery, which was Jesus. Wild. And I saw this just people beating the hell out of each other with a football in their hands, like just going through this. And I just kept pointing out like, and that's how you get a hernia, by listening to this music and doing this type of shit. That's how you get a hernia.
But your ass wasn't doing I ain't never seen your ass chasing a football in a pit.
That's fine. Like a football is just there for things.
He found his corner, and there's some good ones. I don't know if you sent me a picture this year where some obviously there are like photographers at events, and I just remember you sent me one where you're just like up against the railing at the end, and you're just
that
like,
show.
Yeah, was it the same one?
That was that show. It was hot in that venue.
If people aren't familiar with the end, there is like some steps up, so you can kind of look down. Really, I mean, you're like knee height to everybody else, but I just imagine. I mean, the amount of times I've been at that venue and been along that railing and just looking down at like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like you're almost like at the Coliseum, and you're just. Oh.
I mean, it's to the lines kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this album is a great blending of just like. Austin and I have had a joke for years. It's part Ooga, part Booga. Like it's got great caveman riffs to it. Very just like slow plodding, kind of old school death metal sounding riffs, but it's got, these slam chromatic riffs in it. The vocals are illegible. They're inhuman sounding. The drums are a big deal in this band. The drummer actually doesn't use a kick live. It's just a pad and triggers, and it's fucking hilarious. It's so good, the fact that like these guys are just like, yeah, we just want it to sound this way, and why do I need to carry a kick drum if I can just get away with this? The snares are tuned way too high.
They've been featured on a lot of stuff, or at least the singer has this year. Year of the Knife.
That was a great release.
There's a couple things that I know he'll pop up on, but it's a good pick. Absolutely filthy album cover.
Oh, despicable. That album cover is horrifying.
Yeah. Before I get into my next pick, I'm going to interject some, throughout this episode, I'll probably interject some EPs and splits and collabs that I really like. So if I'm kind of moving through this chronologically on my end. This was released in March. It's a collab with Full of Hell and Primitive Man, Suffocating, Hallucination.
Talking about heavy.
Closed Casket Activities, another one for that label. Is very heavy, very abrasive sounding record, which is to be expected by Primitive Man, perhaps one of the loudest bands that I have ever seen. I got to see them this year. They toured together, actually, kind of in promotion for this collaboration with, I think it was Fit for an Autopsy and the Acacia Strain. And so they played at the Metro. I did not see that show, but I did see Full of Hell and Primitive Man on separate tours. This one was Primitive Man. Why? I don't understand. Like, what is happening? God, if anyone's watching this video, I don't
Matt's
understand how.
Stoked.
We got to figure out how to get rid of the Zoom setting. I don't know what the hell happened, but I saw them live. It was Primitive Man. It was Crowbar. Stomach opened, which is a great local band I'll get into a little later. Body Box, that like slam, like death metal band from Florida. They were great, but this was it was a fantastic show. And I also forgot earplugs, and as I often every time I've seen Primitive Man, I always think before I go, like, I should bring earplugs just to protect myself at any time. Like, it's not even just them, just live music in general.
Yeah.
Protect your hearing. I always fail to do that, but this record's awesome. Again, a one that should certainly be listened to as one piece. And there's certainly heavy parts, but there's also kind of breaks with these long atmospheric noise passages as well. So yeah, Suffocating, Hallucination was a collab that I highly recommend. My next record though is a debut from a band from Belgium, and this was a kind of a surprise. Like, this band was announced. They announced they're coming out with a record. I think they debuted live at Roadburn in the Netherlands. Predatory Void, 7 Keys to the Discomfort of Being, which is out on Century Media. It was released in April. It's like a mixture of things. I can't really hold this band down to one particular genre. It's certainly got kind of black metal moments mixed with sludge and death metal. This is a band that features members of several other bands: Oathbreaker, Amun-Ra, Carnation, Living Gate, Crossbringer, Cobra, The Impaler. I think that's probably how I got into it, was through the Oathbreaker account. That band's been on hiatus for like quite some time. And the guitarist of this band, who plays in both Amun-Ra and Oathbreaker, I think was just writing some things that he felt did not fit in with either group. So just started a new band. And he always makes the most like interesting riffs. And I don't know, it's metal, but I could feel like there's definitely influence of a little like kind of like one big inspiration that I know this person has is like The Cure. And I think you can kind of hear some of that on this record as well. It's super heavy. It's very unique. The vocalist is amazing as well. Not only does she do amazing, like kind of guttural death metal vocals, but there's some clean singing on this record that is wonderful as well. I would love to see this band live at some point. I think that's definitely a bucket list if they ever make it here to the States. They've been kind of hitting it hard in Europe and at festivals in kind of their area. So I think hopefully in 2024, that is something that happens. So Predatory Void, 7 Keys to the Discomfort of Being, definitely check it out.
My next pick is the album We're Still Here by the Hers Collective. Very fast album, kind of power violence grind. Came out on Get Better Records, which I think is their, like, the Hers Collective's record label. Came out on March 24th. I think Hers Collective has 2 LP. This is their second LP maybe, but kind of like Thou, they have like a countless amount of EPs and splits and comps and, you know, whatever.
One with Thou, right? Is that?
Yeah, they did a bunch of Nirvana covers.
Yep.
Together. I've seen Hers Collective.
Really?
Kind of randomly. One of the times I was visiting Philly to see Peyton and Wyatt, we went to the First Unitarian Church.
Oh,
and
damn.
Narwhal was playing, so I fucking saw Narwhal in Philly, and Hers Collective was playing too. It was really cool.
I can just
it was really random.
I can just imagine those guys like, what the fuck are you doing here?
That's a legendary venue. I think it's still around.
Yep.
Yeah. Chappie never ever remembers me. it's so funny. Like when Shell Vachelle played at Donna's, like in 2020.
Oh
February,
yeah, it was the last show that happened at Rockies.
Yeah. Pre shutdown. He was like, yeah, the last time I think I played in Bowling Green, it was in the drummer of 16's house. Like, and I was like, yeah, that was my bedroom.
I'm me.
And he was like, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then I like saw him at the end of last year, and I was like, hey man, it's really good to see you. Like, I am the drummer of 16. Like, I love every time I see your band. And he's like, I don't know why I can never remember you.
There was a guy, not to go too far off topic, but there was Swindle and I worked at this television station, and there was this janitor who would come in like every other day or something like that. Swindle worked at this place for years, like literal years. I probably worked at this place at the time for like maybe a handful of months. And this guy knew my name. He knew like so much about me just because I was on the weekend shift alone. We talked for a little bit, and he never remembered who Swindle was. He never remembered his name.
Well, I worked on the weekends too.
Yeah.
I talked to him so often.
Perfect.
But he never once asked my name.
Never.
And he would like, there would be girls that would start there and he would know their name literally day one.
Yes.
And remember it for the rest of the time they worked there. But he never once asked.
I told him multiple times because he would ask me. He was like, what's that guy's name again? I'm like, it's Swindle. And he's like, or Justin. And I'm like, nah, doesn't ring a bell.
Anyway, so this album is very fast. All their shit before was way grindier. I think for this album, kind of like Zulu, they played a little bit slower, but it's still very fast. But the songs are longer, and I think they're more like they decided to put more effort into writing songs.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I thought it was a good
There's
album.
a fuck ton of like, I think every song has like a guest.
Yeah, so many. Like, I don't know if the people play, because Hers Collective, like when they play live, they have a drum machine. It's only two people. It's usually like a guitarist and the vocalist programs the drums. I don't know if like, because Gouge Away is on the album.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tommy, the drummer of Gouge Away, plays drums.
I don't know.
On the song
It may have been I don't know if it was the vocalist. I can't remember. I do love that song.
She definitely.
Yeah.
Jessica or whatever from Gouge Away does vocals. And
it has like everybody.
I don't know if.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if like Tyler, because Thou is on one of the songs.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tyler's playing drums on that song or not.
Could be. It has everybody like Garbage, like the singer from
fucking
Garbage.
Shirley Manson's on
crazy.
that joint. Sunrot.
Yeah.
Fucking.
That's cool.
It's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of piggybacking off something a little more grind adjacent. Again, grind is kind of foreign to me because it's just not my thing. But one grind band that I love unabashedly is Exhumed. Exhumed put out a fantastic EP this year that has a couple, I think it's 3 new recorded songs and some live recordings of those songs. The EP is called Beyond the Dead. It was released in August of this year. Came out on Relapse Records. This is like their umpteenth EP release. They've done splits, you name it. This band is really prolific, having the great songwriter of Matt Harvey. I'm probably going to butcher the title of this song, but the track I kind of picked off this EP that it's a perfect representation of what this band is. It has all the good things about this band, the high vocals, the low vocals with raw sewage, the great kind of like old school terrorizer riffs. Like there's some Exodus-esque stuff in there. The track is called Lysergicide. It's the opening track on it, and it is fast. It is just fast and gnarly. I've been a fan of Exhumed for many, many years. I heard, I believe the Matter of Splatter when I was like 13 and was just completely mesmerized by it. We actually, Austin and I got a chance to see these guys many years ago, and I think we arrived after they got done.
Yeah, I was pretty bummed. Yeah.
So we never got to see them.
I had to work or something, and we got
that's exactly what it was.
It wasn't
was Carcass, Obituary, Noisem. We missed Noisem and Exhumed.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
But that was just an EP I enjoyed this year. But speaking of like really, really fast shit, the new Cryptopsy album, As Gomorrah Burns, came out on Century Media Records in October. I love this band. We have gone over this band's classic album, None So Vile, in depth. I think this is the first album in many, many years that they've had that kind of has some of that vibe back again. This is also their first album on a label in like a decade or something like that. They've released a couple EPs and then another full length back in like 2012. This thing has everything you want in a Cryptopsy album. It has the dizzying speeds, the hyper blasting drums, the kind of like slap and pop bass that's all over it. That somehow works in this band in a brutal death metal fashion, has the gnarly vocals, but it also has the anxiety ridden like song structures that this band is known for in the time signature splits. This is a really great, just nasty sounding record. The track I picked is another like tongue twister. I believe it is called, oh God, Lascivious Undivine. It's the opening track, and it kicks in, and there's all these like jarring kind of grind guitar parts in there. It's like a 32-minute long record, which is there's probably an hour and a half's worth of actual musicality in that song because it's just so nasty and technical. The album came out on Nuclear Blast Records, not Century Media. They were signed to Century Media beforehand. Shout out Century Media for signing a lot of really good bands and putting out really good records for the last few years. But new Cryptopsy, I mean, you can listen to this like while you have your coffee in the morning. It's loud, it's fast, it's intense. It doesn't let up. There's not a soft spot on it. It's not like a baby's head.
I was gonna ask if the new bassist of this band slaps, but I didn't mean the style of playing.
He's good. He's really good. He's also in another one of my albums that I'll touch on in a minute. He's pulling double duty in a couple of really big popular bands.
My next record is a black metal record. Black metal can be kind of hit or miss for me. I like when it is done well. And
non-hateful.
Yes, also that. Get the racism out of my black metal. It's fucking stupid.
You got a couple good black metal picks this year were really good fucking records.
Yeah, and I think the main thing with, at least for sure the next couple I'll talk about, but this first one kind of leading things off, is that they're just unique. They're doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I love a record like Krieg's Ruiner is like just straight ahead, no bullshit black metal.
Yep.
Love that record. This was like, certainly had more traditional black metal elements with unique twists. I'm of course talking about Blackbraid, which is not a band that I really knew prior to this record. I have since gone and looked at the debut, but Blackbraid II came out independently back in July. This is the sophomore album, as I mentioned. It is a solo indigenous black metal project. I think kind of based out of like northeastern kind of like upstate New York kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the project is kind of headed by Skagasawa, and again I apologize if I have mispronounced that incorrectly, but John S. Krieger, just making some of the most unique black metal out there. I've seen this come on a few end of the year lists.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I mentioned, it is very abrasive and it features a lot of more traditional black metal elements, but then there's also some more traditional indigenous kind of instrumentation on this record too.
Yep.
There's some flutes, there's some kind of rhythmic like aspects of this record that I would feel kind of lend to a more indigenous perspective. So this was a really great listen. I loved it. I think people should certainly check it out, especially an artist who is doing things kind of on their own independently and writing in that way. They were on the Decibel magazine tour from this year as well. So awesome. Great. It was like Cattle Decapitation, Dark Funeral, Blackbraid, and maybe one other one that I'm kind of missing.
200 Stab Wounds.
Yes. So
200 Stab Wounds.
Blackbraid, just a tremendous release this year. Blackbraid.
That is a massive sounding record. That for somebody who did that independently, that is a massive. It sounds like a major label record.
It sounds incredible, especially with all of the things going on.
Yes.
Like I said, with obviously you will certainly record electric instruments one way, but then to do some acoustic stuff, even some of like the, they're like it's almost like a Foley artist was on set, kind of doing this with like. There's walking and it feels like somebody's like walking through like gravel or like, the woods or something. Like it's a really interesting and unique record. I highly recommend it. It's when you look at the runtime of it, it seems like it's a little long. It's about an hour and some change long,
but once you listen to it, it doesn't feel that way. Now that is definitely an album you have to listen to in one sitting. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to pick this track, because what I noticed is how all the tracks kind of blend into the next one and how it flows. I put off listening to that record for a while, not for any reason other than like, I got to listen to a few other things first. And when I finally got to it, I was really, really satisfied with how good that record is.
My next release is MSPAINT's Post American. MSPAINT from Hattiesburg, Virginia. This is their first LP. They had an EP before this. Came out, was released by Convulse Records on March 10th. I didn't go to very many shows this year. I think like 3 or 4. One of them was the Soul Glow and MSPAINT tour, and it was cool. MSPAINT is a punk band, but there's no guitar, I think. There's just keyboard, synthesizer, and the drummer also uses some like drum pad stuff, electronic drums, maybe a little bit. Most of the lyrics are a little bit political, but also very positive. This is what actually like one of my absolute favorite records of the year.
Nice. Yeah, I think what is like Ian Shelton of Military Gun, Regional Justice Center, and Taylor Young both kind of co-produced this record. This is a good one. Yeah, they came through Chicago. I was unfortunately out of town, so I missed it, but I like it. I like the pick.
Taylor Young's had his hands on a lot of interesting records in the last couple of years. I think he did the most recent Suicide Silence record, which is just kind of completely bonkers to think about. Hopefully they get the studio situation figured out, because I know they had to move the original Pit recordings. But there's so many bands that have recorded there that are tied into a lot of large labels now. Isn't Military Gun has like, succeeded in like a Turnstile-esque way.
Yeah, they're on their way. I mean, they signed to a really great label. They put out a big record for them, and we'll see where that goes. But
I was on Spotify yesterday, and if you like go to your search page, they have those like real looking like REEL videos.
Yeah.
And one of them was like #power pop, and it was fucking Military Gun.
That's wild.
And I was just like, wait, what?
Well, it's not punk. It's not even hardcore, but it's definitely not your pappy's death metal. I've been looking forward to this album for a few years. This was a band I got into at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm talking about the new Afterbirth record, In Not Of. This thing is wild. This band's known as being like a slam death band or a brutal death metal band, but there is so much more to this band than meets the eye. This is a fantastic release. It came out on Willowtip Records. I believe it released in October, so it's a little bit later in the year. Something about September, October, November for death metal this year was fucking insane. There was you were just getting hit with a brick every second. And I mean like a cinder block brick. It wasn't just one of those little red pansy things. It was absolutely just madness. This album was from the artwork that dropped a few months before up to the first single was more of a straightforward song. I think it was the opening track. But then the second single that was released was this weird like drum and bass and like ambient sounding track.
Yeah, it was like hovering head drones. Drones. That wild.
It had like these police-esque like chords and these Cure-esque sounds going on into it. This is if you take this album at face value, yes, it's a brutal death metal record, but if you really hone in and listen to it, like there's so many lush sounds going on into it, and it kind of goes off into like this interdimensional kind of sound. fantastic. If you've got an open ear for like, and an open ear and an open mind for death metal, and it's not all just going to be, Immolation. It's not all just going to be, Cannibal Corpse. Those are great bands, but you got to have a little bit of experimentation for this stuff to keep going. Fantastic record. Check out their other records as well. This is absolutely in my top 5 records of the year for sure. This is a fantastic record. The song, I had to pick like the most difficult pronounced song title as my song pick for this. It is, and I love it. It's Vivisected Psychopomp it's great. This is definitely one of those albums that when I listened to it, I was looking at the artwork the entire time and just like getting fully engrossed in it because it is, hopefully 2024. I know this band doesn't play out much. They typically play up in the upstate New York and New York area. I would love to see these guys in like a one-off show somewhere. Also, Big Will Smith is the vocalist of this band, formerly of Artificial Brain, who I did get to see this year without Will in it. I believe the vocalist is now, the vocalist of Artificial Brain is one of the members of Inter Arma, I think.
Oh, wow. Which
is a weird tie in there. But talk about a band that's got a lot of different sounds to their album. Sludge. There's a little bit of sludge in this. There's kind of New York death metal in this. There's some like, Deftones-esque guitar sounds in this. It's a wash. It definitely is, but it's a great record.
Going off of another death metal release, an EP, before I get into my album pick, this was kind of rooted in old school death metal, which I know people have kind of said for a lot of at many points this year that they're kind of tired of this trend. This is an album that, or an EP rather, that I felt was, it just kind of stood out. When I heard it, the riffs, very ooga booga. The vocals are kind of cavernous with the reverb that is applied to it, which is great.
All the way up.
The EP is titled Cavern of Inoculated Cognition by a band called Spinebreaker. This is a band that features current and former members of Tsunami, Gulch, Upon Stone. It was released on Creator Destructor Records. This is a fun listen. It's quick. It's a handful of songs. I was not familiar with this band before. I think this is their sophomore EP, so they have a few other releases out there, but just a really fun, just brutal, heavy record. Lots of great riffs with groove and kind of little guitar accents with like, dive bombs and all the squeals and the whittly doos that you could expect out of a band like this. Definitely check it out. Spinebreaker, Cavern of Inoculated Cognition.
Can I say something on that record?
Yeah, please
I
do.
love the fact that was a record that came out this year, but you also got an album from the band Torture Rack this year. So like very wrestling adjacent terms there, and I love it. Lex Luger, and you got, I know it's like, it's Spinebuster is the move, but just I love this trend of like death metal adjacent bands somehow naming themselves after like wrestling moves. It's hilarious, but in the best way possible.
Intentional or not, it's great.
Yeah, it's all part of like, I get it. I get the bit. Like, they're working us.
My main pick though is a band by the name of Agriculture, their debut record, self-titled record that dropped on the Flenser back in July. This is a band based out of Los Angeles, and again, it is black metal for sure. However, it is so many other things. There is kind of instrumentation or instruments that you wouldn't typically find on a record like this. I think the album kind of starts out with like lap steel. There's saxophone that kind of picks up at times on this record, but then there's like blast beats, and I've seen a lot of people when they reviewed this record, call it like uplifting, and maybe it's kind of like akin to Death Heaven. It's not exactly like it's not a Death Heaven ripoff. It's their own thing for sure, but maybe it's like the major chord kind of progressions that they use on this thing. It just makes it sound a little more cheery, if you could call it that. But it is heavy. It is like definitely a black metal record. There's one part I remember I was listening to. There's like a kind of maybe an intermission part called The Well. That almost sounds kind of like an emo indie break. It's just vocals and the guitar. It almost kind of reminded me of like Songs Ohio, like a Jason Molina thing with like electric guitar in the middle of it, and then it just kicks right back into just super fast, tremolo black metal picking, but really cool. Definitely kind of an eclectic band. Maybe you could like relate them to Panopticon or Wolves in the Throne Room, just again by doing things a little differently, including instrumentation that you don't normally hear on records like this. So Agriculture, the self-titled record, is out now on the Flenser. Definitely a highlight for me this year.
Great record. Definitely one like you suggested to me and like I completely fell in love with. That is a great record. They definitely have the there's a vibe that is very akin to Deaf Heaven. I think that's going to be the comparison, but they have something a little bit different about them that separates them from that. I feel like maybe they're a little bit more to the point with their songs.
Okay. Yeah.
With that, at least to me, because it's a quick listen. And
it's only like 30 minutes or so.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, this can be done in that time frame and it still has the same vibe to it. And
right.
I thoroughly enjoyed this album. Like bought it right after the first listen.
My next pick, friends of the show, former guest, Faerie Ring, the album Weary Traveler.
Hell yeah.
Released on King Volume Records in April. This was their second LP, right?
Yep.
From Evansville, Indiana. I think this is kind of just regular old metal, but maybe a little stoner. It's definitely Black Sabbath-y a little bit. One thing I thought was hilarious when I like went back and listened to this right before like preparing to do the show, I was just like, they are really the kings of the bridge riff. Like my favorite riffs of all the like not that any of the rest of the riff, not that the chorus riffs or the verse riffs were bad, but all the riffs that I fucking love on every song are like post second chorus.
Yeah.
Like the bridge riff was always the king.
That's the mosh spot, man.
Yeah. I love I don't know, I can't remember if it's the title track or if it's damn it, or like Silver
it's the track Swindle picked.
Silver Man in the Sky.
Silver Man in the Sky. I don't know if it's the title track or Silver Man in the Sky, but there's like a point after the bridge. They always just like when I would listen to the album and you'd have this wild bridge part and then the way it just kind of lands exactly back where you started is like on a dime, and it's so great.
Oh yeah.
Love James, love Alex. That band is so good. I think kind of getting into the studio with maybe, obviously there's like a member of Coven, Alex Kircheball, I believe, when they, kind of entered to like a more professional studio. I think certainly the debut is great. But I think that definitely elevated them like this a whole other level.
This album definitely has more textures and more influence to it for sure. It sounds like a live band. It sounds like a band that's been in the practice room for hours upon hours upon hours. I know, as we know, it was all tracked, old school. And you can definitely feel that. You can definitely tell that. I did get to see them at Tidballs back in, I believe, August. It was August. And it was decimating. It was absolutely just, you could feel the air being pushed out of those amps. It was just one of the wildest things.
Every time any band they've ever been in has just always been the loudest band on the bill.
Yeah.
It was like every time.
That they were actually one of the 3 or 4 shows I went to this year was Paul Bearer and Faerie Ring up here in Louisville.
Really? I didn't realize they opened for Paul Bearer. That's rad.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something. Paul Bearer is loud.
Yeah.
Well, I guess piggybacking off of that, we've kind of been talking a little bit about black metal in this, and I was actually surprised you had a couple picks for black metal, and I've got a couple myself, and there were some really good black metal releases this year. and some that kind of came out of nowhere that, you know, you wouldn't really think were going to be released. And it was a really hard blending of what albums I wanted to talk about tonight. This is actually an album you mentioned earlier in the show, and I picked it because it was really straightforward, which is the most recent Krieg album, Ruiner, which came out in October. Obviously, we had Neil on, had a great conversation with him. This is a really, really good, solid, just black metal release. It came out on Profound Lore, probably one of the larger labels he's dealt with his releases. The artwork is very attractive because it's a white cover. It's just got it's got a tattoo design on it. But this is just a very straightforward, fun, just primal sounding black metal record with kind of their vibe. There's some punk rock vibes on this. So maybe early second wave black metal stuff on here. Just really, really fun record. I really can't say anything other than that. You know, this was a release this year. The newest release from the band Woe came out this year. That was a little bit more bombastic in sound than this one. The track I picked that is definitely a standout track for me is No Gardens Grow Here. That
riff is
man.
So good.
The whole riff. Melodic feel and that melodic kind of lead in that song is something. Like, this could have been a folk song written by any other artist. It could have been a folk track. Neil's got a pretty recognizable voice when it comes to American black metal. And it's very just, there's a rasp to it, but there's also this like, I don't want to say depraved because that's not it. But this very like on the edge of a cliff kind of feeling to his voice that is what really sticks out to me with black metal. Like, really good, well done black metal has that kind of desperation to it that I really like. And it, to me, good black metal puts you in kind of a weird mood. You know, I read a quote many years ago that said, if you're listening to black metal, you're probably not happy all the time. And I went, hey, fair. And this album makes me happy. It's a good record. It's quick listen as well for those that, you know, just want to like dive in a little bit. This would be a good record for anybody that's never really listened to black metal, that maybe wants to avoid a lot of the dirty stuff about black metal. You could give them this and go, hey, this is kind of a good starting point for anything.
Yeah, this is good. It was on my much larger list, and I'm glad somebody brought that up because it definitely, you know, obviously there was like almost a 10-year gap between this and the last record. So I'm glad they're back. I'm glad they're playing some shows again. They're going to be up here in April. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. My next record is on the more traditional side of things. Another former guest of the show to kind of go on with that trend. This is perhaps their most realized record to date.
You aren't kidding.
This is this band's fifth record. It was released on Century Media back in August. Band is based out of Austin, Texas. Spirit Adrift. Their new record, Ghost of the Gallows, is out now. You know, I don't believe the record hadn't come out by the time we had interviewed Nate earlier this year. Definitely a highlight for us. This definitely someone we had on our like bucket list of who do we want to talk to. And, you know, we kind of get a little backstory on the record. When it actually dropped, man, I don't like every song. And I think he kind of mentioned this in the interview. He mentioned in the interview that he basically sought to not have like bad, like there was every part had to make sense.
There's no filler on this record.
Yes. So I just, even from the beginning track, the track that really stuck out to me, the whole record's great, but Give Her to the River, he basically wrote his like battery intro. Like
it's there.
It's there. It like, it gives the same vibe, but like it is so explosive, and the guitar tone on this record's incredible. Nate's vocals are great. He has also.
That's something you mentioned in our interview with him, is that he, with each record that he does, his vocal performance gets that much more realized. It becomes that much more, and he has ended up as a really, really good vocalist. It fits the music. It doesn't seem like the music's here and it's way up here. He's consciously thinking about all of this stuff as he's crafting these tracks. The lyrics make sense. The music makes sense. This feels like an old school record. Here's the A side. Here's how the B side ends. This was a hard record to like pick any particular track out because, like I said earlier, every single song on here could have been a single. If this album was released, in the late 70s, this thing would have been a fucking smash of a record. This is my number 3 record of the year. There's no question.
So you have this on your list as well?
Oh my, yeah, this is on my list. That's why I'm like really digging in.
I know we would have like some.
This is the one comparison we have. You picked the opening track. Funny enough, I picked the closing track.
Interesting. Okay.
This was the reason I picked the closing track is Nate has, and it's through his podcast, which is Big Riff Energy. He went through kind of the earlier portion of that where he's talking about like listening to like Old School in Flames and that album by that band Master that came out and some of the old Gothenburg stuff. And like that track sounds like those Gothenburg songs. And that's the first time I'd ever heard him truthfully do that, or at least maybe it's the first time I realized it. I mean, God, there's some tracks on here that are just bombastic. How like this is a record I could give to anybody and be like, this is what modern metal sounds like.
There were people I recommended this record to when it came out who do not like said verbatim to me that they didn't like Spirit Adrift or they don't like metal in this style. And they were like, I have not been able to get some of these riffs out of my head.
The riffs give me fucking chills to this point. Like,
yeah,
I went back and kind of touched on the album a little bit before the episode today. I was like, oh my God, like and again, it's a fantastic record. Obviously, I think the band's taking a little bit of a break right now. He's been busy doing some other things. I know they have some shows coming up with Green Lung, which he had alluded to in our podcast. And they've got a couple shows in Arkansas they're going to play pretty soon too. Again, this band deserves all the praise, all the attention that they get. I have been championing this band since you and I got a chance to see them in Nashville off their first record or their second record, first for $20 spin. I didn't mean to kind of take over this spot on this record, but this is such a big fucking record for me this year.
No, I'm glad we both picked it. And, Nate and Tom Draper, who of course used to play in Carcass.
God,
they're just going back and forth.
There's some wild classic rock shit on here, just like Leonard Skinner.
It's precise. It's just a very great guitar record. Definitely check it out. Ghost at the Gallows.
Yes.
Definitely up there. Since I guess both of us had a pick, Swindle, what is your next record?
My next record is the album Locked in Time by Restraining Order, from released by Triple B Records. Restraining Orders from Boston, carrying on a long tradition of hardcore punk from Boston. This album is pretty short because it's punk. It's not super heavy, super tough guy riffs. A lot of it is kind of like open chord punk a little bit, a lot of ringing, jangly chords, and it reminds me actually a lot of kind of like Rohern Park era.
Oh yeah,
Ceremony. Yeah, it's pissed off, really good, fun punk rock.
So before I kind of dig into my next pick, I wanted to talk about a split that came out this year. It was a big deal. $20 spin, releasing some of the best records out there in like modern heavy music. That label has championed like this old school death metal sound, but also found bands that are like pushing the envelope with it. I don't know if this is a full length. I don't know if it's a split. It definitely feels more like a split to me because you have two separate artists releasing what they would consider an EP, but the Dream Unending Worm split that came out this year, Starpath, hell of a record. It was released in one of the coolest ways possible. It was just like, here's the record, here's the pre-orders, get it, it's already out. I can't really pick one song off of it because it's all good, and depending upon the day, I may prefer one over the other. I can say that Worm is one of the most prolific, weird artists with some of the kind of strangest guitar sounds and just like, but it fits in. It fits with what they're doing. And Dream Unending has actually become more of a favorite to me than even some of the Tomb Mold stuff. I believe his name's Derek, right? That dude's got his hands all over so much. The dude is a riff meister. I mean, he played on the most recent Outer Heaven record that he played fretless bass on that thing as a guest. And that almost made this list as well to talk about today. But like, that dude's got his hands all over so much.
Yeah, this was actually one of my picks for EPs as well. I thought this was, again, just a great surprise, because I loved even last year when both of these bands put out releases. Dream Unending put out a record. Worm put out Blue Nothing was the Worm record, and then the Songs of Salvation, the Dream Unending. I think that might be one of the songs on the record.
It's wild, whatever it is. I remember it.
Yeah, that was amazing. And
it looks like a Dune book cover.
These guys are some nerds, that's for sure.
Hey,
good nerds.
Bring it on. But the full length I wanted to bring on is I'm going to go ahead and kind of dig into probably the last release that really got me this year. Again, it's a black metal release. The most recent Lamp of Murmur album. I happened to see the artwork for this through a Twitter follow that I follow, or an X follow. It's a guy named New Millennium Cyanide Kep is his handle, but like, he posts all this really great new music, and I saw that album cover and went, okay, this is like some Genesis, end of the world shit. Or Revelations into the world shit. I got to check this out, and man, was I surprised. This isn't just like misanthropic black metal. This isn't like depressing black metal. This has riffs all over it. This is almost like a Mortal-esque stuff. The vocals are a little bit different. Like, no one can repeat Abath. This is a very, very fun, quick listen. I even looked this band up just to make sure, God, I really like this band. I hope they don't suck as people. And they're completely anti that. They're actually on these forums of good people. And it's really fun, especially with all the stuff that Vice just leaked about all these black metal artists.
Oh yeah. Wild.
But this record is absolutely astonishing. It came out on Argento Records. I haven't actually found a copy of it yet. I'm hoping that once we make a certain trip up north, I might be able to find a copy. But the song I picked is Conqueror Beyond the Frenzied Fog. It's the opening track of the release. It sets the whole tone of the record. It's fun. Even the guitar tone is very similar to the Abath records. The Abath records and the Immortal records. It's that kind of frosty, kind of fried sounding guitar tone. And it just immediately sunk it in. It's like, God, this isn't just Immortal worship. This is just a really good, old school sounding black metal record. I wasn't expecting to find another album I loved as much as I did this one. And in December, this album came out in March. Somehow it just completely went over my head. Great record.
My next record that I picked, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. The new Tomb Mold record, The Enduring Spirit, which is out now through $20 Spin. This is their fourth album, or their follow-up rather to Planetary Clairvoyance, which came out in 2019. Toronto-based three-piece. I had missed these guys, I felt so much, through lockdown and this pandemic and everything. And obviously Derek, as we mentioned, is very busy in a lot of different things. We saw him record with Outer Heaven. We saw, obviously, Starpath came out. Dream Unending was a new project. So it's just been very busy, but I've been craving, Tomb Mold. They released a 3-song EP at one point that I got on cassette. And then this record kind of gets announced in a similar way to Starpath did, where they're like, hey, in a week's time, you're going to be able to pre-order this record, and it comes out on the same day. here you go. And it was awesome. It was so great. Like, oh, I just have to get through the week, and then Friday I'll be able to listen to this record. And it did not disappoint. This is a band that, while has like roots in the like kind of old school death metal thing, is very technical. These guys just are lovers of music. I feel like they listen to a lot of different things, and I feel like that kind of makes its way into this album. There's like, it's like a jazz band just decided to play technical death metal.
It's very Cynic-esque in a sense with that.
Very progressive.
Yep.
I think with the start of his other project, Dream Unending, you will find some influence from that project finding its way into this new Tomb Mold record with kind of these like sparse kind of atmospheric parts, which kind of give like players room to really showcase their skills. Like you just kind of, we mentioned earlier with like Big Brave, where you almost have like these long sustaining parts where somebody is doing something over it and it's wicked. Another fretless bass on the here, definitely clearly in the mix. Awesome record.
It's wild on this record too, because Manner of Infinite Forms and Planetary Clairvoyance, which are the prior two records, are very like aggressive, very intense, like almost incantation, like immolation-esque death metal, very like low tuned, kind of like riff centric. And not to say this thing doesn't have riffs, but this is definitely a far more realized vision. Maybe there was a little bit more thought into it. It's definitely more melodic in a sense, has a lot more of that kind of like symbolic era death kind of harmony vibe to it. Definitely on that. This is on my bigger, list that I had for sure. I knew one of us would pick this record to talk about. And I'll say this, there were a lot of upset people when he showed up in shorts on that Decibel album cover, or that Decibel magazine cover. Hilarious.
It's 2023. What the fuck are we talking? Like, really?
Hey,
that's
man.
the thing? Twitter? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I sound like a dumb idiot, but
It's fun.
yeah.
Wear shorts, man. It's cool.
Yeah,
Shit gets hot.
It's comfortable. Yeah. Balls was hot.
Balls was hot. Thank you.
Yeah, wear shorts if you want to wear shorts.
Yeah. It was just to see the world melt down over like a dude dressing
world.
like a fan of music was hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the same thing with like, I'm sure like true, I'm sure
It's all there.
like these kind of like old head kind of, it has to be this way. You're supposed, like, I'm sure when that agriculture record came out, there was like a ton of just like out of touch weirdos who complained about that record having a lap steel on it or some stupid bullshit like that. But yeah, listen to Tomb Mold, wear shorts, they breathe. Swindle, who is a long champion of comfortable clothes as well as shorts, what is your next record?
My next record is Stone by Baroness.
Hell yeah.
Their sixth full length sludge rock metal stalwarts from Savannah, Georgia. Kind of friend of a show that Austin didn't he like call in to one of your shows earlier?
Yeah, so I do another show on the radio called Music Telephone, where I connect artists through like the album liner notes, and I'll do a little research and just see what inspired these bands. He had mentioned that he's like a big fan of Sonic Youth, and that was like his first concert, so I'm like, all right, I'll do that. I'll connect him that way. And I made the post, he like commented on it, and then he literally, as like the show started, I guess him and Gina were both listening to it, and he like called into the station, and I talked to him a little bit on and off air a little bit, and just kind of talking about music and kind of coming up through that. So it was like, yeah, random, here's like this Philadelphia number calling in. And I'm like, hi, Mr.
Hi, Mr.
Hi,
Baisley.
Mr. John Baisley. Yeah, that was a really cool moment from this year for sure.
Yeah, I think this was kind of like a return to maybe a little bit heavier Baroness.
Yep, I agree.
When I guess it's the second song technically, when it starts in with the first song, that first riff in Last Word, which was I think the first single, it goes hard. It's fast and it's a killer riff, and everybody's doing their thing. The drummer and bassist
That
of
rhythm
Baroness
section
currently
is tight.
always on point, and they continue to be on point. And Gina's solos, she fucking shreds on some Cirque du Soleil shit.
Yeah,
right.
ready for
Wasn't
some.
she?
Ready to hear her on those new Escuela Grind tracks
I'm
coming
getting
out.
into that a little later for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do their dueling guitars as Baroness has always done.
Sludge Metal Allman Brothers.
Fucking Thin Lizzy shit all over it. Just a good record by Baroness.
I agree that this definitely feels like a return to maybe those sludgier roots. I've enjoyed every single Baroness album, but I think you've mentioned this in episodes before. You always kind of go back to the ones you heard first, right? And I think yours is the Red album, and then mine's the Blue record. So this is the closest thing to like that era I've heard in a long time. This band's got really cool stuff throughout that period, but this just hit at the right time. The artwork's fantastic as always. Yeah. Never been a bad piece of artwork from this band. It's almost worth just owning the band's catalog for that artwork.
I don't know how that guy is like also so good at writing the music that he does, and then also can produce artwork like that. Like, and
Man.
I mean, obviously he's done stuff for what is it, Black Tusk and
Darkest
a number
Hour.
of different bands. So cool.
His voice also.
He's got a cool voice.
I love his singing voice.
Absolutely.
The track on the Blue record that really made me point out his voice was Still That Sleeps the Eye, which is just like great. And it's like, I'm so glad he took that and was like, screaming's fine. It fits in, but like, I kind of want to go more this route. And I'm so glad he did. It definitely fits their music is fully realized, I think, at this point, 7 albums deep. Of course it is.
He has a really he has a really good way. It seems like he is yelling, but he's also yelling in key.
Oh, it's pitched. Absolutely.
But he's like definitely not holding back.
No.
He's like going hard when he is singing.
That's like Hetfield 88, 89. Like it's that thing, that like screaming and pitch thing that is just kind of it's more akin to singing. Like, I don't know how he sustains it. That is some wild shit. Great record. Nearly hit my like 10 to talk about today.
Yeah.
We're kind of narrowing it down.
Getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. So before I have one more EP before I dig into this next record, because all the last 3 are like, really aggressive records. But I want to shout out one of probably my favorite EP of the year is Arkansas band Fleshbound. They released an EP over the summer called Wounded. It's self-released. It came out in June. Really, really brutal and bombastic technical deathcore from Arkansas that doesn't rely heavily on breakdowns. There's a lot of riffs, a lot of really fast syncopated shit in there. Really well produced as well. I'm looking forward for more of this band maybe in 2024. They just released a cover of Whitechapel's Prosthetic Fluid Asphyxiation, which is on their first record. I have been a fan of this guy's playing and writing since he was in a band called Abimael like 10 years ago. The first Fleshbound EP really piqued my interest because it's got traditional Southern instruments on it. It's got like banjo, it's got like mandolin in it. This is just really fun, really good listen. It shows that there are bands in Arkansas that can not only bring like traditional sounding metal, but also can bring like, the slams per se. The track off this record to really, I think really culminates on this EP is The Night Engulfs Our Hearts in Flames, which sounds like an old In Flames track to me. This is a really cool EP. Dakota, get on that new shit. I know you're busy. But to lead into this, I want to go with probably one of the most aggressive sounding records I've heard this year. New Suffocation. I love this band. like no end. I was in a band in Arkansas, and one of the last shows I ever played was opening for Suffocation before I moved.
Really?
Back in like 08. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize that. You'd never said that to me.
I know I've mentioned it to Swindle a couple times. Maybe I haven't. I've got the poster around here somewhere.
That's rad.
But yeah, it was Suffocation, Whitechapel, God Almighty, Psychroptic, bunch of other bands too. Decrepit Birth were on there as well.
Jeez.
But this record's the first record without Frank Mullen. You know, I've shown you the videos of like him drunk on that boat singing like Frank Sinatra tunes in like death metal growls, like in jeans and everything, doing the chops that he does, which is like amazing. He's a showman. They're all from New York. And you can hear it. These are the originators of like New York death metal. They're the originator of the slam in the song Liege of Inveracity off of Effigy of the Forgotten. But the album I'm talking about is Hymns of Apocryphia. What a fucking record. They've got Ricky Myers on vocals, who is the formerly drummer of Disgorge from California. He sounds amazing. I think there was a lot of doubt about what he could do, replacing the original vocalist, longtime vocalist, and a very charismatic vocalist at that. And he's done so good. This is one of the first Suffocation records that I've heard with production that matches the quality of the music. Like the production for this band's always felt a little off to me. It's a modern production without sounding overly produced. Like everything's just nasty sounding on this. Derek Boyer's bass playing's up front in the mix. Terrence Hobbs, one of the riff meisters of like death metal. The dude knows what he's doing. This is a fucking vicious sounding record. I have done a lot of exercise and walks to this record, and it's just like there's no tree safe without me breaking a limb off of it to this record. Like going just jogging down the sidewalk and these poor kids playing basketball, and I'm just like, God damn it. What is wrong with you kids? Shave that mullet. Like this is just, God, what is going on in my head? Fantastic
That's very
album.
Portland of you.
What's that?
That's very Portland. It's just running down the street with a stick in your hand, chasing kids.
Tennessee, Portland, Tennessee.
No, that's Arkansas coming out. Yeah. That's Arkansas. But
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
This is their 9th album, by the way. This came out in November, and released on Nuclear Blast Records. This is my favorite record they've done since their self-titled album in 2006. And God Almighty Christ, what a fucking record. Delusions of Mortality is the song I picked. Everything in that song is representative of what Suffocation is. Kids, deathcore would not exist without Suffocation. Take that for positive or negative. I don't care. But like, it wouldn't exist without Suffocation.
My next record is a local band that I had the opportunity to see for their release show this year. What a time that was. It featured some vets of the scene. Weekend Nachos came back to play the show. They've announced some dates going forward. All Out War played. Fleshwater, Ingrown was amazing. But Harm's Way with Common Suffering out on Metal Blade Records. This is their second for the label. Posthuman, which was released back in 2018. So it's been like 4 or 5 years by this point. I've been waiting. And it was worth the wait for sure. It takes a lot of elements from that record that I really, really liked, and then just kind of hones it in and refines everything. I think I was at that Crowbar show when it came out, the night it came out. And I remember just driving back from the city back to the burbs and just listening to it. And, you can really just kind of zone out. It's heavy. It's got like kind of that classic Harm's Way feel of like the kind of one finger, almost like
that band's got a bounce to it.
Tom G Warrior kind of Triptychon. I know they love some Tom G Warrior type of riffs on on these songs, but I mean it's so much more than that. There's like
that
electronic elements. The Undertow was definitely a standout track. I love that. I love King Woman. I think King Woman is such a fantastic artist and vocalist, and Celestial Blues is a great record. I think one performance that I've seen on like YouTube before too is King Woman kind of played with Thou at like St. Vitus, and they covered a Something in the Way by Nirvana, and I thought that was like amazing the way they did that together. But she is incredible on this record. She actually performed at the show as well. She came out from California to be a part of the set. They really went like put their all into this record, just writing, really trimming the fat, I guess. I don't know. There wasn't a bad part that I really caught on this record. They recorded with Will Yip, who is kind of a pretty sought after producer. He did the big Turnstile record, or a couple Turnstile records, Title Fight, Soul Glow, Mannequin Pussy, Angel Dust. There's even a track at the end of the record, Wanderer, that is it's a great ending to the album, but it's not really, it almost sounds like kind of a modern Alice in Chains track to me.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
The vocal harmonies, the way the riffs are played, it's great. Everybody, from the kind of newer members to the guys who started the record, everyone has like such a great presence on the album. So check it out, Common Suffering. It's out now on Metal Blade Records. And if they're coming to a city near you, this is definitely a band to see live for sure.
Swindle, I don't mean to like jump on you. I wanted to touch on a band that he touched on that played that show, All Out War. Almost made the list as well. Probably one of my favorite hardcore records that came out this year. Very blackened at that. Like they're one of the OGs of metalcore, like that Earth Crisis, Integrity. They're kind of in that same vibe. They released an album this year that is fucking awesome. Called Celestial Rot. Came out on Translation Lost Records. Blackened, weirdly blackened at that. Definitely check that out if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
My next pick, something I recommended to y'all and something I talked about on as a rec in the podcast recently. Pest Control, Don't Test the Pest.
Yep.
Apparently this album came out in like February. I didn't know until like 3 weeks ago. Pest Control is from Leeds, West Yorkshire, England. The album was released on Quality Control HQ. Really fun, crossover thrash. Everything's fast. Vocals, not super high in the mix, kind of like not buried, but like back, not super loud in the mix, but short record. A lot of fun to listen to. Kind of reminds me of like DRI and also like Municipal Waste kind of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. When you recommended it, it was right up my alley. I love that just kind of, if anything with like Municipal Waste or just kind of fast, like, thrash with a punk edge, I'm all about it.
That album cover is still, I will still say, looks like the cover of a Goosebump novel from the early 90s. I think that cover's great. Almost makes me think of some of the old Locust artwork in style. Like some of that kind of like very vibrant looking color. Wow. Fast record. Down to my last two here. So I got to go with like one of my favorite bands of all time. This band's never put out a bad record. George Fisher is the GOAT of death metal vocals. We don't talk about the era before that. George Fisher's the man. He will always sound good. Every time I've seen Cannibal Corpse, I have been decimated. You know it. Everyone knows when a Cannibal Corpse record comes out, what you're going to get. You're going to get barraged with just annihilating riffs. This was one of those albums, the album being Chaos Horrific, that was released on September 22nd of 2023. This is one of those albums you couldn't just pick one song off of. There's so much bonkers shit on this album. Blood Blind, the debut single from the record. Probably this is Eric Rutan's second record with the band as a member. This is the most Rutan sounding record he's done. He's all over this album. He is playing his ass off. Rob Barrett is a lot more forthcoming with his writing. The only reason this album isn't my number one pick of the year, this hit number 2, is they did a cardinal sin for Cannibal Corpse Records. They buried Alex Webster in the mix.
Oh, damn.
He's buried pretty deep in there. He's got a couple points where he pops out, but usually you can hear him pretty well all over the record. His writing's all over this. His handprints are all over this. I don't even have to talk about the label this thing came out on. It's Metal Blade. It's been Metal Blade for almost 40 fucking years. This band never lets up. I've been watching Cannibal Corpse live since I was 16 years old, and I've always left just like losing my mind. It's like when you watch this band, it is a barrage of 30 years of hits. You get a couple new tracks, but every hit is just like, God, they're going to play that one. Oh my God, they're playing that one. A modern hit for them is Scourge of Iron. And I went with our buddy, our all mutual friend, Matt Graham. And during Scourge of Iron, I just like grabbed him and just violently shook him. And it is, what a perfect band. I hope this band keeps going. If they're releasing stuff like this, they can keep going. Eric Rutan is a perfect fit for this band. Has been since day one. He's been producing their records since like 2006. And that's a classic record we'll talk about at some point. But the track I had to like pick off this was Drain You Empty, which is just heavy. It's sludgy in certain points. It's almost got a borderline breakdown in it. It's got dissonance, and George just enunciates all over this record. You can hear every word he says, and it's like his voice just never wears out. It's just, you can't beat it. It's Cannibal Corpse. Like if anybody can take the helm of what Slayer did in their height, it's Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah. Very consistent, but like not without just adding a little thing here and there. With
each record has something different to it.
Yes.
Without losing that initial thing.
My next pick is a Chicago band, local band to me here in Illinois. This is a band I came into contact with through our friends at Meteor Gym, a great record store downtown in Chicago. And I just kind of listened to it on a whim. I didn't, they basically had like a listening party for this album. And I was like, I should check this out and see what it's about. I wasn't in attendance, but I need to know more. What a surprise it was. It was so great. It's like blackened death metal, but I cannot hold this band to one genre. I am, of course, talking about Selenoplexia with Exalt and Despair. This is a band, 4-piece Chicago blackened death metal, but it's all, there's like doom elements, there's sludge elements. It's all over the place, but it makes sense for what they're doing. There's not one particular sound they're going for. It doesn't sound shoehorned into the project. It all makes sense as one piece. And it should be treated as such. It's a kind of a concept record. It's quite literally a person's descent into hell and maybe exploring the afterlife. I'm sure, many people could interpret it in
very Dante-esque.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite tracks on the record, Visions of Hell, is so good. When there's a song that probably in all of our lives that we can pick out where maybe it's the chord, maybe it's the way something's played or sung, where it just gives you like fucking like your hair stands up on your arm. Yeah. And the beginning of this song in particular, the riff, like the chord progressions, is just so effective that I would like often go back to the beginning and listen to it every time. Courtney's vocals on this are great. Dan, guitar player, he's influenced by a lot of things. Obviously, like I think like Leviathan is up there on his list, but then he's also into a lot of like math rock stuff I found out in our interview, which
I could see certainly for sure.
You can check out in there. So there's a lot of things going on with this band. Jonathan's drums are great. It's a amazing record. They have a show actually coming up in February on the 24th at Reggie's with Ashbringer. But yeah, this was like, I don't know. I just didn't expect this record. I'm glad I found it. I think they wrote the last song first and then kind of built the rest of the record around it. But it's an independent release. It was released on Friday the 13th in October. Perfect release day for this record, as with the Runer record, I believe was the same date. So check it out. Selenoplexia. great Chicago band. Exalt and Despair is out now. Couldn't say enough about it. It's awesome.
There's a Rush riff on that album.
Oh, yeah?
Because the first time I listened to it, I was like working out and I stopped. I was like, that's a fucking Rush riff. Like just this kind of off meter. It's probably more math rock centric, but I heard like, oh shit, it sounds like something off Hemispheres. And I messaged you, I was like, there's a fucking Rush riff in this track. I was like, this is great. And that's so like, I've got a copy of it, I think over on my shelf too. I like ordered it straight up.
All right. My next track or my next album is the band Closet Witch, the album Chiaroscuro, another grind power violence album, as many of my albums are. Probably around 20 minutes long. They're from the great state of Iowa. All the good metal bands are from there. This was their third LP, I think, released on Moment of Collapse Records. Very fast. Some good. Well, not. Some riffs that all the riffs are good, but there's a few riffs on the album. Most
it's fast as fuck. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to have riffs in power violence
fast as fuck,
all the time. Kind of a few weird black metal parts on the album too. Had those black metal chords in there. I enjoyed it a lot. It's also not hard to. I was like trying to pick out one song from the album, and I listened to the whole album like 3 times just today. It's not like off-putting to listen to multiple times.
It's a good record. I know Dylan from Full Hell does a guest vocal on this record. Again, another person who has like appeared in multiple releases this year outside of his own band.
Year of the Knife.
Yeah, Year of the Knife, along with Devin, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, good pick. This was a good record.
I guess it's me, isn't it? So this is actually my favorite album of the year. I had to put at least my top 3 on this list to talk about. This is one you and I did a shitload of research on, and spent a lot of time with, it's the Mighty Cattle Decapitation.
Oh yeah. I mean, come on.
Terracite. I mean, we did a 4-part career arcing deep dive on this album, and I loved Death Atlas. I still love that album, but the more I listened to this record, the more nuance I found in Terracite, the more expanding of the sound I heard. This is one of those bands that very slightly will expand their sound and just keep going, and you don't notice it at first. You have to really jump in it to like really engross yourself in it. This album had tracks on it that I'm getting emotional talking about it. This album had some tracks on it that really, really hit hard with maybe some of the isolating things that we're all kind of prone to do. And I mean, Just Another Body is a track. Aphotic Doom is a massive track. This is an album. This is a daunting album to listen to. You have to be prepared to listen to this because it's a solid hour. And it's not an easy journey. It's not that the songs are bad. It's not that the music's bad. It's just, it's not pleasant. It
rarely is.
Yeah.
Decapitation.
Yeah. I mean, there's no hope at the end of this, but the one track, and Austin's heard me say this a lot, there's a track on this album called Solastalgia that might be, if that band continues in that direction, who knows what they could do. They become more of like a post-metal band with that. This thing has peaks, it has valleys, it's got hooks. It is just produced like no other. It's modern sounding without sounding robotic. There's some classic heavy metal stuff going on it. If you can dig through this just dense mix, thanks to Dave Attero. What a fucking record. I've listened to this album. Like, I know Apple does their weird version of like the year-end wrap-up. Like, it was absolutely this record. Even before or after our deep dive, like, I've continued to listen to this and still don't like feel bored about it. It's their 9th record. It's their 8th record. My apologies. Vocals, the guitars, the drums on this are stupid. I don't know how that guy has joints left in his body. obviously Travis Ryan being the proficient vocalist that he is, that can set a mood of a track just by like a fucking noise. The bass playing on this is stupid. Ollie Pinard plays bass in Cryptopsy as well. So there we go. There's the tie-in. Fantastic record. I'm so glad we did the deep dive on it. Magnificent album to like kind of have as my number one. I haven't done one of these like year-end lists in so long, and it was great to do it for like 2023. I was stoked to have as much trouble as I did this year picking out albums that I loved and liked. So, my list isn't varied at all, and I think Swindle can join in with that. Austin's probably got the most varied list between the three of us. Mine's definitely death metal adjacent. Swindle's is like grind and punk, and Austin's actually got peaks and valleys to his. But it's fun. I'm actually looking forward to the one for 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. There's already, we'll get into it in a little bit, but the what we're expecting out of the next year, I think we're going to be excited with what comes out. But
we did the Halloween episode,
Mhm.
and I was very surprised that y'all didn't pick a Aphotic Doom for like the Halloween playlist.
Mhm.
I like watched that video a couple times, and I would like
it's
watching
terrifying
it at work, and I would just be like, no
So-
one's behind me, right?
There's you mentioned like the video, terrifying video. They do a really good job with theirs. I believe Travis was in a video for a band called Macabre a couple years ago where he was dressed up as Ted Bundy, and it's uncanny. It is uncanny, and he knows that it's uncanny.
Well, he does
you
now.
look at it. I have to find it. Like, we need to link it because like it is uncanny, and he knew it. He enjoyed the shit out of it.
yeah, he's great. One of the best vocalists in aggressive music of all time, for sure. One of my favorite vocalists of all time in hardcore metal, whatever you want to call it, has been doing a project for the past like couple years. He's been a member of bands like Weekend Nachos, Ledge, Sawblade, a number of things. His debut record under the, well, I should say a two-piece now. He started this project kind of on his own, and kind of was like learning how to record himself from home and just write just some of the most pummeling sludge doom. This is a two-piece from Geneva, Illinois, the suburbs of Chicago, Stomach, with Parasite. Another great release from this year, Hibernation release, who I believe he has worked with a couple times, but John Hoffman, Adam Tomlinson, kind of vets of just Chicago metal and hardcore. Adam is in a couple bands like Sick Tired and Sea of Shit that are pretty good, pretty well known in the area. I saw them open the Crowbar show at Reggie's earlier this year. I think if you like bands like Grief, Earth, Electric Wizard, you'll definitely like this. I have a huge amount of respect for the way that John writes a riff and basically just kind of finding like the riff and really just beating it into your skull. This is like such an abrasive record. It is, it's an arsenal of sound. I don't know how else to explain it other than I really enjoyed it. It's kind of cathartic. Like I said, you have that one riff on many of these tracks, and you kind of are along for the ride, and it's just like literally the driving force on a lot of these songs. A great debut. I can't wait to see what comes next. I believe he is already finished with whatever the next release is going to be. It may be a split. I'm not exactly sure, but I know just having talked with him a couple times through the year, this is something that he takes a lot of pride in, and he puts a lot of effort into making it sound exactly like what's going on up here. So they have a show as well. Sarin is a band from Wisconsin. I believe they're performing a 10-year anniversary show with some other bands in the area and maybe Wisconsin as well. But Bovice, Ready for Death, Greedworm, Cult Fiend, Chaos Sphere, and Stomach going to be playing at the Cobra Lounge in Chicago on January 20th. So cool show to look forward to, kind of kicking off 2024.
My final pick is Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean. They're most recent release called Consumed by the Vitriol of Life,
Yeah.
which is just the most doom metal album title that you could have. This was their second release this year. I think they released an LP in like February or March or something. 3 songs on this. They are kind of longer songs, but it's doom metal. I think sometimes doom metal can just be like a chord and then another chord and then another chord. I think these songs are like well-written songs and there are riffs, but it's sad and angry and short. So if you're pissed or if you're pissed off and sad about it, listen to this record. It's a good one.
Pissed off and sad about it. Okay.
God, is that a Bill Dauterive line?
No.
No, it's the Texas Hippie
Oh,
Coalition.
God.
I'm glad you got that reference.
Hell yeah. I have never forgotten about that band. It sounds like the dude's vocals sound like a didgeridoo.
Were they on like Big Vin Records or something like
Dude,
that?
I couldn't tell you. I just remember seeing the music video for that song in particular and just like losing my mind that a band like that existed. Stop what you're doing right now and go watch the music video for Pissed Off and Mad About It, which again, I found that I think someone in my high school like that I was friends with like turned me on to that music video. I just whatever. But my last pick, you kind of said kind of like a very bleak and disgusting album title. My last pick is by a kind of very bleak and it's a disgusting record. The new Gravesend record, the sophomore album, Gowanus Death Stop. Gowanus, I guess, is a neighborhood in maybe like South Brooklyn that is very industrialized. This is a very New York record. And what I mean by that is it kind of takes a lot of the themes, maybe a lot of the shit that was going down throughout like its earlier eras of New York. Just, you know, it's filthy. It's a filthy record. It feels like a dystopian, like kind of B movie that you might see set in New York. Like, I don't know, like I think of like The Warriors, or I think of, you know, Escape from New York, or maybe even like Death Wish or something like that. RoboCop.
It's like a Joey Diaz story.
It's a great record. There's like, it's kind of like the SCALP record in a lot of ways, where there's quite a few more tracks and it's definitely longer, but it doesn't let up. It's just one after the other, but also kind of having moments for these like kind of soundscape parts. Like there's almost like I mentioned, Escape from New York. There's definitely some almost like kind of Carpenter sounding synths that go out, but it's like noisy. It's there's samples on this thing. There's definitely some like electronic stuff going on. But you know, definitely for fans of like Pissgrave and Caustic Wound.
I was gonna bring up Pissgrave when you brought this up. I was like, yeah, that's definitely sounds like that band a lot. I love the debut. This is another one for $20 spin. I can't say enough good things about this label, but great sophomore release. There's not really a lot to be known about this band. They're very mysterious. They do not like let it known what their identities are, but I love that they just kind of let the music speak for itself. And this was definitely a highlight. I came out like in October. A lot of great October releases in 2023, and this was certainly one of them. I still believe that the Undertaker and Kane are brothers. I love it. No, I love it. I love when bands keep things secretive. That still is enticing to me, where you don't know everything. You don't know a record's coming out. You don't know if they're working. You don't know what they're doing. They may be dead or in an insane asylum. I love that. I like that kind of danger aspect to some of it, because I think that phrase gets kind of ran through the ringer a lot of like, oh, it needs to be dangerous again. It's not that. It's just that you want that kind of like secretive kind of feeling to some music sometimes, because it adds to the mystique of it, right? Like as a kid, I didn't know who was releasing a record. I'd walk into the store one day and it was there and I could pick it up. And it's like, God, I didn't know this was out. I love this about this band. I was surprisingly shocked with how much I liked this album.
It's a great record. So that kind of does it for our main part of this episode as far as like our favorite heavy releases. There's been a lot of albums, a lot of EPs, splits in the world of metal and hardcore that we really love this year, but we love music. So I know there are some non-heavy releases that we were listening to this year. Do either of you guys want to start? What was some of the stuff outside of this wheelhouse that you should recommend to the folks listening?
I've only got a couple. I'll just kind of rifle through them real quick. Coulter Wall's newest record, Little Songs, fantastic. I love that dude's voice. It's definitely an acquired taste for his voice. He sounds like the oldest man on the planet, which is kind of what Swindle said to me one time. Love that record. I actually went to the local record store in Bowling Green, Mellow Mats, and picked it up. Loved it. I absolutely loved it. This one may be kind of questionable just because it can fall into the heavy music genre, but this record's not technically heavy. It's the newest Queens of the Stone Age album. Times of New Roman. I did not like Villains. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was boogie woogie rockabilly stuff. Just didn't speak to me. But this album sounds like clockwork. Has a lot of that weirdness to it, that kind of depressing vibe. And I loved it a lot. Great album. The last track, Straight Jacket Fitting, is like a 12-bar blues kind of like pummel. And it's just got this kind of dissonant sound to it that is Josh Homme's kind of known for. One other album I want to bring up is I will not be able to pronounce this name the title of this album because it's so long. But the 2023 release from Yves Tumor. My girlfriend Lauren introduced me to that, and I thought it was great. I think the cover of the album's fantastic. I don't know much about it, but this album definitely seems like 90s rock, kind of alt rock. Just a cool listen. That Bjork didn't release anything this year, so I don't have that.
You get the next best, not the next best thing, but
close enough.
I'm not saying
in the
that
same
Yves
vibe.
Tumor is like second place to Bjork, but yeah, you got something else. I've listened to a bunch of shit that wasn't heavy, but some of it, like Tyler, the Creator, kind of re-released an album. He re-released Call Me If You Get Lost, but there were a few new songs, like 5 or 6 new songs. The new album is titled Call Me If You Get Lost, The Estate Sale. I like that one. They're kind of like an R&B vibe. I liked the Daniel Caesar album, Never Enough. I also liked the Janelle Monáe album, The Age of Pleasure, which is just the horniest album of all time.
I've heard you say that.
Yeah, it was bisexual people had a great horny summer because of this album.
The rooms were wet.
On kind of like a country vibe, Tyler Childers, Rustin' in the Rain. I also liked Jason Isbell's Cast Iron Skillet album, and that's it for that. I also like the Mitski album, which has the most doom album title of all time that's not by a doom artist. The land is inhospitable, and so are we.
Damn. Heavy.
Yeah.
Non-heavy folks doing heavy
Shout
things.
out to CJ Greco.
Oh, yeah. He loves Mitski.
Yes, he does.
I have a few. I also listen to a lot of like non-heavy stuff, but for time's sake, let's just rifle through 3 of them. Cutworms, the self-titled Cutworms record. This is a project led by Max Clark, who I think is, I know he spent maybe a little time in Chicago, but I think he is New York based, but this is like a country record. Definitely some classic vibes. It's almost got like, it's country, but it's got like 60s kind of like pop feel to it. I love country music, and I kind of miss the way when it sounds like this. This was perfect. It was released back in July through Jaguar Records. He released a double album that I really liked, but it's called Nobody Lives Here Anymore. And there were a lot of songs from that record I like, but sometimes it's a lot. And sometimes I think things get lost. This was like the complete opposite, where you may have had like 10 tracks and they were just it was scaled down. It was the perfect kind of length, and all the songs were awesome on it. I love that record. My next one is Domino by Diners, which is a project that Blue Broderick sings. They play guitar, write the songs. Again, this is a power pop record. Just really kind of catchy Beach Boys worship. I loved every song on this record. And then my last record, Joanna Sternberg with I've Got Me. This is a sophomore album. It was produced by Matt Sweeney, who has been on like so many things, produced a lot of different records. Has worked with like Kurt Vile, Cat Power. He also has a really fantastic YouTube show that I think is coming back called Guitar Moves, which I watch religiously.
Oh,
it's awesome. So great. So he produced this record that came out on Fat Possum Records back in June. I've heard the term, or somebody was quoted with saying that Joanna sounds like emo Randy Newman, and a lot of it's like not particularly one thing. Yeah, dude, it's so good. It's so great. You got to listen to it because I
got to listen to it now.
It's so gut wrenching because
if I can hear Randy Newman sing WAP, I'm done.
Oh, it's so emotional. It's so impactful. Like it has a lot of like, it's like lo-fi. It's like singer-songwriter, like jazz pop. It almost sounds like you could have heard it in like a musical or like a play or something like that. But I've Got Me, definitely a highlight for me this year. I love this record. So we've talked about all the records that came out this year. There's obviously some records that we're going to be looking forward to next year. Are there any on the docket that you can kind of talk about now that you're maybe looking forward to or hope that comes out next year?
I've got a few. I think a mutual love between you and I is Holder, who has just dropped pre-orders for that. Verse and Oath, her second full length, coming out on $20 spin. We keep bringing that up. Looking forward to that album a lot. I like their take on black metal a lot. It's definitely got the vibes of kind of the transcendental black metal stuff of like Wolves in the Throne Room, but it has a very old school, like Bathory kind of feel. Celtic Frost, Hammer, God, the name's slipping me of the pre-Celtic Frost band.
It's
Hellhammer.
Hellhammer,
yeah. Very, very Hellhammer-esque. I love it. I like that. For every bit of black metal I like that's like technical, like Emperor or Dissection, I love it when it can be straightforward like this and it's just this primal kind of sound. This newest single is fantastic. Band you introduced me to, Upon Stone, looking forward to that record. I heard the most recent single with Brian Fair on it, and Brian Fair sounds like a madman. I haven't heard him sound that just aggressive in almost 20 years. I mean, there's so much shit that's coming out this coming year already. New Job for a Cowboy is coming out. The newest Vitriol record, which is Pissed. I've brought that up 3 times now. Escuela Grind, we touched on that earlier. That track with Barney on it is amazing. Not Barney the dinosaur, but the angry Barney.
The Barney the Greenway.
Great
apparently,
shit coming out this coming year.
Gina Gleason apparently is going to be laying down a solo for that record too. That EP.
There's going to be a new Gatecreeper album out this year.
Damn, I forgot. I should have put that down. Yeah, new Gatecreeper record coming out.
New Gatecreeper, new Null coming out. There's a new Chelsea Wolf record coming out soon. I mean, shit.
That'll be good shit to listen to in like January or February.
Oh, of course.
It's still dark.
Seasonal depression is rampant.
Yeah, we got
Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
There's so much shit already.
Some of the stuff you mentioned was definitely on my list. Worm announced that they're starting the writing process for a new record, follow up to Forever Glade back in 2021. They're also going to be on the Decibel Magazine tour next year with Holder as well.
Fun.
High on Fire is supposed to release a record early next year as well.
I think it's done. I think that record is in the can.
Yep. Ghoul going to be releasing a new record as well. Merciful Fate and King Diamond. We talked to Andy LaRock this year. They got some new stuff in the works. We got new Nails record was announced to be coming out soon.
Who would have expected that?
Kurt Ballou
Ever.
has worked with this band for like pretty much on all of their releases. It's been so long since You Will Never Be One of Us, so I'm excited to get to that. And one record I know for sure, I don't know when it'll be coming out, but we've been kind of joking off air a little bit, me and Swindle, with just a new Thou record. There's been some Instagram stuff of them like recording things, and the last couple of releases have been collaborations. So the last full length they did that was just them was back in like 2018. So
yeah,
been a while.
Motherfuckers.
There's
it's been so long.
It's already like the year is already stacked to like have so much shit like coming out in it. One I wanted to mention was there's a local band from Nashville that's like dissonant death metal called Pelagius. Actually has members of Null in the band. They share a guitar player. And they've had hints that they're writing and they're recording, and there's even been a couple sound clips. So like I'm hoping for some shit from that band.
Yeah. Swindle, anything else that you want to note?
I saw Spencer Radcliffe post on Instagram that he'll be releasing an album next year.
Damn.
Which it's not heavy, but I love Spencer Radcliffe.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I would love to see a new Emma Ruth Rundle album. Always. I would always love to hear some new Soul Glow. They released a single this year, but hopefully they come out with a new album. But most importantly, please, Thou, give us like 7 albums every
and
time
they
you
will
release. Yeah,
they will. It'll be at least 2 full lengths. One of those will be a collaboration. There's at least going to be 4 EPs, a covers 7-inch split, something. I know what that band does, and it's exhilarating to see all this shit get released all at once.
Well, definitely some things to look forward to, but I'm glad we got to take a moment to look back on the year in music. I want to hear from you, anyone listening right now. Comment below. What did you love this year? Do you agree with any of our picks? Would you have gone differently? What were you listening to? What are you looking forward to in 2024? Guys, I can't thank you enough for making this year so much fun to do this podcast, even if it's just an excuse for us to like get on the horn every week and just talk about music. Love y'all. Can't wait to see y'all next year. Follow us on Vocal Distortion 891, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Our live show is going to be still going in 2024 for a little while longer until I graduate. So that'll be fun. But yeah, thanks for making this first year of Riff Worship very, very special.
Yep.
We'll see you next time. We'll be talking about some more riffs.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.